told you the IRS will let you pay your kids tax-free and write it off as a business expense. So there I was doing payroll when my 4-year-old Lincoln sprints by in a Minecraft costume, foam sword in hand, classic Tuesday. And it hits me. I could actually pay this little guy someday. Like real money, we're not talking fruit snacks. And because of one IRS rule, I could potentially do it tax-free when the time is right. There's a right way to do it and a very wrong way. So today I'm breaking down how to legally hire your kids, save thousands in taxes, and build generational wealth for the future. A few years back, I met with my accountant Jeff to discuss this strategy. We were grabbing coffee and I casually mentioned that I was thinking about eventually putting my oldest Pearson on payroll, when he's old enough. Jeff immediately lit up. He started sharing some information that honestly I had no idea about at the time. He said, "You should absolutely consider it. Kids under 18 can earn completely tax-free wages and it's completely legal." I remember I was like, "Wait, what?" And Jeff just smirked like he always does. He's this tax nerd with a whole bunch of energy. And he says, "It's not a loophole, Rich. It's literally written in the tax code." And he was wearing sunglasses because we were sitting outside, and he just kind of like takes them down, and I could just tell he's about to drop some serious knowledge on me. So he starts explaining that if a child earns under the standard deduction, which is $15,000 at the time of this recording, they owe zero in federal income tax. And since it would be my business, if I'm taxed as a sole proprietor or partnership where both partners are parents of the child, I don't owe any Social Security or Medicare tax on their wages. So I said, let me get this straight. I'm like leaning in kind of close. I said, my kid gets paid. I get a deduction and neither of us would pay any tax on it. And Jeff, he just starts nodding. Says, if you do it right, that's thousands in savings right there. But there are specific rules you need to follow. And then he jokes, or it could trigger an audit faster than your kid demolishes a bowl of mac and cheese. So let me walk you through what I learned about implementing this strategy when kids are ready for it. According to the Department of Labor, the general minimum age for employment is 14 years old. But there's a special rule for family businesses. Kids of any age can work for a parent-owned business as long as it's not in manufacturing, mining, or hazardous jobs. So while my two kids right now are still very young, I'm starting to plan which age-appropriate jobs they could reasonably do as they grow up. And Jeff, he emphasized that that part is crucial. The IRS isn't going to let you pay your young kids tasks that they clearly can't even perform. And Jeff, he goes on to explain. For example, he says, you could have a 10-year-old sort mail, file papers, or help with simple data entry. And a teenager could help with social media, basic design work, or customer service. But make sure it's work that's actually needed in your business and it's not just, household chores. The IRS actually has accepted a 7-year-old may be an employee, but it probably won't believe children younger than 7 are performing any useful work for your business. Now, since my kids, Pearson, he's only 7 right now, Lincoln's just 4, I've got some time to plan this out properly. So I ask him, I'm like, hey, Jeff, what about pay rates? How do you determine what's, considered reasonable? And Jeff leans back, he kind of thinks for a moment, and he says, well, you gotta pay them what you would pay anyone else to do that same job. Look at market rates in your area. Say it's local data entry and they earn like $15 an hour, well, that's what you would pay your child for similar work. If an administrative assistant makes, $14 per hour, $12 an hour, well, that's your benchmark. So when the time comes, I'll need to set them up as real employees. The payroll service that I use makes this process super easy. We're talking handling W-2s, withholdings, keeping everything documented and compliant. And documentation is key here. You got to keep detailed logs of hours worked, take photos of working, maintain job descriptions, just like you would for any other employee. And so if this is sparking ideas for your own kids or just future business plans, do me a favor, drop a like and make sure you're subscribed, especially if you want a more advanced strategy breakdown I have coming next week. Here's one more critical part. There are 3 rules you need to follow when the time comes, or the IRS will disallow everything we're talking about here. This is where most parents mess up and leave thousands on the table. Rule number 1, real work for real pay. Your kid actually has to do work. So document their hours, snap photos like I said, keep job descriptions. Jeff, he recommended creating a simple, job description document that outlines everything specifically what they do. You know, think like an auditor, he always says. If anyone ever questioned you, you've got clear evidence that this was legitimate employment, not just an allowance, you know, disguised as a salary. Rule number 2, reasonable wages. You can't pay your child excessive amounts. You got to use market rates for similar work in your area, and, you know, it's best just to keep it conservative. One of my clients, when we were talking about this, she asked if they could, you know, just pay their kids the maximum deduction amount for really like minimal work. And no, that's basically called an allowance, not a salary. And the IRS, it knows the difference, it's not gonna work. Rule number 3, W-2, not 1099. Your kids aren't freelancers in your family business. They're employees. You need to issue a W-2 and make it official. If you're a sole proprietor or have a partnership with your spouse and your child is 17 or younger, you don't need to pay Social Security or Medicare or unemployment tax on their wages. And that's awesome. I mean, that's like the best part. But you do need to withhold income tax regardless of their age. So you want to make sure you're doing this right. And for my S-Corps out there, I want to clarify this point. Yes, FICA taxes do apply. You need to consider setting up maybe like a family management company as a sole prop and then pay your kids through that. My suggestion is to talk to your CPA to make sure this fits your setup, but this strategy, it's been in the tax code for decades. It's completely legitimate when everything's done right. Now for the bigger picture, the part that makes this strategy truly life-changing for your kids' future, think about this. Because they have earned income, they can open a Roth IRA. The money in a Roth IRA grows tax-free and can be withdrawn in retirement completely tax-free. For the current year at the time of this recording, the contribution limit for a Roth IRA is at $7,000 annually. And they can also use it early if they need to for qualified educational expenses or for their first home. Think about it, that's millionaire math right there. All from legitimate work in your business. I don't want my kids starting life playing catch up. You know what I mean? I want them seeing compound interest before seeing student loans. And when they're 25 with more saved than their friends, that's when they'll probably understand what we started here. In fact, just the other day, I showed a Pearson compound interest calculator on my phone. And I tried explaining in simple terms how money can grow over time. And his eyes got big. He's like, Daddy, the money makes more money by itself? And that's just some genuine curiosity right there that makes me proud, but also think that this plan could work beautifully for years to come. And Courtney, my wife, she's on board. I mean, when I mentioned this plan to her, of course she had questions. She gave me that look like over her coffee mug one morning. She's like, are you sure about that? And you know what's funny? She wasn't concerned about the plan. She's like, are you trying to turn our like kindergartners into family CFOs? Of course, she just smirks. She's joking. She just doesn't want them like growing up being little money-hungry robots. And you know what I said? Fair concern. Here's what I told her. When they're ready, they'll think it's a game, but they're learning real-life skills while playing this game growing up. And the money, it's going to go straight to their future. It's not for video games or stuff that'll rot their teeth and their minds. I just said, you know, think of this as an advanced strategy. When they're old enough, real work for real pay and a head start on their financial future. Even my 4-year-old Lincoln, he seems curious about work. The other day, he asked me while I'm driving the minivan, he's like, Daddy, what did you used to look like when you were a teacher? And I only retired from teaching a couple years back, and I just smirked, I laughed. I realized that he's already curious about, you know, life and how it looks to create something meaningful in this world. And while saving thousands each year is awesome, this also for me goes way beyond taxes. It's about teaching my kids the value of work and showing them how money actually works and building generational wealth. If you run a business and have kids, I'm telling you, the IRS literally gives you a way to pay your children, write it off, and invest in their future. But only if you do it right. For payroll and W-2s, you're going to want to rely on a service that makes compliance easy. I personally use Gusto right now for all my payroll needs. It makes the whole process, like onboarding, taxes, simple, stress-free. If you want to follow along with the exact tools I use right now, and I'm going to plan to use them with my kids later, I'll leave links down below in the description. Yes, it's an affiliate link, but it's generally what I use and will continue to use with my own kids when they're ready. This is what generational wealth looks like. Not just handing kids money, but teaching them to earn it, save it, watch it, grow it. Teach them young, and don't miss this IRS rule for yourself. You know, the other day when I told my accountant Jeff Pearson, I already asked if he could work for daddy or mommy's businesses someday. I just told him when he's old enough, we can discuss his pay range and his quarterly performance reviews. And you know what, all joking aside, next week I'm breaking down how to structure your business entities to maximize these tax benefits even further. If you're ready for these tax savings and strategies, again, make sure you hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and if this provided value, give it a thumbs up. All right, as always, I'm Rich, and until next time.